David Garrett.
Mr Chairman, thank you. I'd like to start by, and I'm glad that Tauhenere is still in the chamber, because I always like to correct where I've got things slightly wrong, Mr Chairman, and on this occasion I'm very happy to, having checked the reference, Tau is correct that Princess Teipuia actually suspended the dispute about the Raupatu claim for the duration of the war, and the events that I described took place in 1945. So Tau was correct there, but he could have taken a wager off me, but he chose to be kind, and I'm grateful to him. But, Mr Chairman, I think it's worthwhile recording the circumstances of that settlement in 1945, and I'm quoting or reading from Michael King's book Teipuia, published in 1975, chapter 13, headed Raupatu and Other Causes. And King says this: the eventual offer made on the marae the following day was for £6,000 per year for 50 years and £5,000 thereafter in perpetuity. The boldness of the move took the Conservative spokesman by surprise. Before disagreement could erupt yet again, Teipuia told Rory Edwards to get to his feet and accept. He stood up and said, and Mr Chairman, I'll do my best, "Kua oti te taki nei," which Mick Jones translated to Fraser, that's Peter Fraser, "the matter is finalised satisfactorily." In this manner, a sore that had festered for 82 years was finally healed. So I was slightly incorrect, Mr Chairman, and I'm very happy to acknowledge that. But we've learned a new word here tonight, or at least I have, from the Honourable Marion Street, ontologies, and I haven't had time to go and check a dictionary, and I don't have a laptop. I suspect it means world views. I've taken from the context. And the Honourable Marion Street talked about competing world views, and that's fine. That's absolutely fine. I don't care whether one believes that the Waikato River is a living entity with a life force. And I don't care whether Mr Finlayson still holds to the religion I was imbued with as a young boy, that believes that a piece of wafer on the ringing of a bell literally becomes flesh and blood of Christ. As a man of 51, I find it absurd. But if Mr Finlayson wishes to, if the Honourable Chris Finlayson wishes to continue to believe it, that's his business. I have no problem with that. If other people wish to believe in the tooth fairy, I have no problem with that. A number of New Zealanders have declared their religion in the last 20 years or so as Jedi, taken from, I believe, a series of science fiction films in the 1980s. Who cares? That's their business. But, Mr Chairman, what we're having here is a world view of a specific narrow group of Maori foisted upon not just Pākehā New Zealanders but other Maori, Mr Chairman. We are supposed to have a secular government, and yet we have seen highways delayed because of the alleged presence of a taniwha. This is the same kind of thing. Mr Chairman, no one in this country, whether they be Maori, Pākehā, Chinese, whatever, should have to have their plans and their lives, not disrupted, that's not the word I was looking for at all, governed by the ontology or the religion or the superstition of others. And it's very, very easy, Mr Chairman, when you get this kind of bill full of vague terms, undefined as it is. The writer on environmental matters, Owen McShane, has said many landowners and resource users will find they're having to deal with evidence based on religious belief rather than scientific or experiential evidence. Mr Chairman, one can measure environmental and economic impact, but it is impossible to measure the impact or calculate the impact of development, any kind of development, or any kind of use for that matter, on a life force. You can't do it. That won't stop those with vested interests, Mr Chairman, whatever race they are, from doing it. It will be very tempting for those to claim some damage to the river's life force, or Māori, I understand is the Maori word, in order to block competition to their own economic projects. Tempting, Mr Chairman, and I dare say inevitable. This bill gives control to a tiny elite group backed by those hardcore environmentalists who are opposed to any kind of development see in this, Mr Chairman?
David Garrett.
See in this religion, this ancient animistic religion, a vehicle to assist their own fringe causes. Mr Chairman, the people of Auckland should be worried by this. The Waikato River is an important source of water to the Auckland region. How will the co-governance model respond to demands of a growing population north of the Bombay Hills? Will the needs of the human population be too much of a strain on the metaphysical being that is allegedly the Waikato River? Will its mythical inhabitants, or its Māori, thank you, I'm trying my best, be more important than the very real people whose actual... Will you give it a go, Mr Cosgrove? You never even bother. Yeah, do you? It's not very good. Will that be more important, Mr Speaker, than the real human beings whose actual life force depends on that water? Mr Chairman, this bill is packed with phrases which won't mean anything until case law defines them, and we've seen that before. I touched on, Mr Harawira is affirming that is so. We've got an activist Supreme Court in that edifice across the road who will be quite happy to define things that are left vague in this bill, Mr Chairman. They've done it before and they'll do it again. They're looking forward to it, I'm sure. This is another example of how a very few Māori in the elite have gained disproportionate power thanks to the Maori Party's deal with the National Party. The only reason the emissions trading scheme...
Point of order, the Honourable Parakura Horomia.
Mr Speaker, the member alluded to the elite. This is about a whole lot of people at a whole lot of different levels in society.
I hear the member. These are debating points, and that's not acceptable. David Garrett.
Mr Chairman. But he's managed to... He's successfully disrupted my flow, which I'm sure was the intention, so well done. Mr Chairman, in short, yes, my life force has been disrupted, Mr Chairman, so I'll just have to ad-lib from here as best I can. Put in a couple of sentences, our objection to this bill is control by an elite according to a particular worldview. Or, forget about elite, control of an important resource due to or according to the worldview of a very few. And that is dangerous, it's undemocratic, we are opposed to it, and we will continue to oppose it so long as we get the chance, Mr Speaker, Mr Chairman, both in this bill and in any other bill which contains similarly bad principles. Thank you.
I call the Honourable